friends, how are you today? We're learning about birds, and what I find very interesting is that birds can sing. And it kind of might be really that they're talking, but it sounds like singing. And they have special ways that they talk to each other and special calls that they make by making sounds with their throat. So I found a really good book. It's called The Song of Six Birds. And it's written by Renee Dietlefs. And the illustrations are done by Lynn Gilbert. And you can tell by looking at it that this little girl is not from around here. I think she might be from Africa, because when we get to the page where they show her houses in her neighborhood, they look like African houses. Let's find out. Look, see the houses? They look like the houses in Africa that we learned about. Lindewee, that's her name, Lindewee, lay on her grass mat, sleepily aware of the music of morning as it stole into her ears. Cattle lowed, buckets clanked, goats bleating. Lindewee yawned, then blinked her eyes. Next to her on the smooth, cool floor lay an African flute, just like the ones in the wayside store. "Mama," she whispered, "is this flute for me?" "Yes, Lindewee," said her mother with a smile as she played with the baby. "It is for you, child, who loves music." I love music too, don't you? Up jumped Lindewee. "Mama," she cried, "a flute is full of music. Just listen." Look, they have chickens, and there's a dog and some goats. Putting her lips to the flute, she drew a mighty breath, and she blew. This is what it sounded like. What a shattering noise! The dozing dog started up and howled. The chicken squawked and the baby screamed with fright. Lindewee peered into the dark tunnel of her flute, like this. See the tunnel? There was no sign of music there. "What's wrong with this flute?" Lindewee wondered. "I must find music for it." So off she went, past two old mammas weaving grass mats, all the way to the river in search of music for her flute. "Mayhem!" called a crowned crane, preening himself in the morning sunlight. Preening means that they're like picking at their feathers or trying to brush them and get the dust off, like when you comb your hair in the morning to make it look good. "Crane," begged Lindewee, "share your trumpet call with me. This flute needs music." "Mayhem!" trumpeted the royal bird. The echo of his call flew into Lindewee's flute. "Thank you," she shouted, jumping from stone to stone as she crossed the river. "Mayhem! Mayhem! Mayhem!" A boy heard goats on the other, who was herding goats. That means he's keeping them all together on the other side. He was listening. "Talk, talky, talk," a hornbill called from a rock. "Hornbill," said Lindewee, "you see my flute? It is new and cannot yet sing like you. Share with me a ticky-tock." So the hornbill obliged. "Talk, talky talk, talk, talky talk." And into Lindewee's flute fell the bright round sound. "Thank you, Hornbill," she cried. Along a dusty path, a woman was hanging blankets on a bush to air. Unseen, a bird sang, "Do, do, do, do." Quiet as a mouse, Lindewee listened to the soft, falling notes. Do, 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 do. "Don't hide from me, Rainbird," she whispered. "This flute needs a song from you." But the Rainbird would not open its beak. So Lindewee waited and waited. At last, from among the leaves, the Rainbird appeared, holding out her flute like this. She quickly caught do, 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 do. "Thank you, shy Rainbird," she said softly. Then suddenly Lindewee shrieked. A hornet's sting had burned her arm. Did you ever get stung by a bee or a hornet? It really hurts. Off she ran to the village medicine man, who was quietly gathering herbs nearby. "Look at my arm," sobbed Lindewee, "and my poor flute. I don't want the sound of my sobs inside my flute." The wise old man smiled, laying a cool herb leaf on her throbbing arm. "But a flute should sometimes sob," he said. "Ask the hoopoe." The hoopoe. I think it's hoopoe. What's a hoopoe? Lindewee turned and saw the hoopoe. Oh, it's a bird. Searching the ground for insects. Oh, not that one. This one down here. Raising and lowering his crest. The crest is his like mohawk feathers on top of his head. He called, "Whoop, whoop," the notes catching in his throat like the sound of quiet crying. Lindewee wiped away her tears. "Hoopoe, please share your song with me." "Whoop, whoop," he called again. Lindewee smiled. The mellow song was safely in her flute. Whoop, whoop. Let's count the birds that she's caught their sounds in her flute. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the edge of the village, Lindewee stood aside for an old man riding his bicycle. A jar heavy with honey was balanced on his carrier. Following him was a paradise flycatcher. Wow, look at that amazing tail. Wee, wee, oh, wit, wit. The tiny ripple of sound settled on the tip of Lindewee's flute. Wee, wee, oh, wit, wit. That's cool. Now the sun hung low and Lindewee's shadow was long. Just before the sunset, a wood owl called, "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo." Lindewee caught the sound in her flute. She peered into it, and a smile spread slowly over her face. The song of 6 birds filled it. Hoo, 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 hoo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I wonder if they got into my flute. Lindewee hurried home, followed by the 6 birds. They all made music while she ran. Their joyous sounds carried through the village, calling everyone to join in the fun. Humming and swaying to the music, the two old mammas left their looms. Then the boy and his goats came capering along. The woman with the blankets whistled and skipped. Prancing and chanting came the medicine man, and then, dancing like he said he used to long ago, came the old man with the bicycle. Lindawee's mother, hearing all the jolly sounds, smiled proudly. "Here, my child of music," she said, "I have made my special stew, so all can join in a feast." Isn't that nice? The whole neighborhood came to listen to Lindawee play her flute with all the bird sounds, the bird songs, and they all get to share a feast afterwards. Now eating, now singing, now dancing, the happy party lasted long into the night. The air was filled with the music of Lindawee's flute and the song of 6 birds. The end. I was wondering if I could share this flute with you. It's actually called, it has a name. It's a different kind of flute. I forget what it's called. But anyways, this is the mouthpiece where you blow, and this is a hole where the air can escape. And down here are some holes. And you put your fingers on the holes because when you blow air into it, if you cover some of the holes, it changes the sound. Let me show you. I'm not a flute player, but I'll show you the best I can. That's just blowing it straight. And when Linda started, she just blew it and it was like really loud and ah! But if you cover the holes, watch what happens when I put my fingers on the holes. It changed the pitch. Was it higher or lower? Let's try that. That was high. Now, if I cover all the holes, it's a little bit lower. Now, watch what happens when I take up one of my fingers. It's fun to experiment. Did you notice in the book that the bird calls, the bird songs that Lindawee put inside of her flute had patterns? Remember? Mayhem, 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 and ooh, 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 ooh. Those are patterns like we've been learning about. Well, I brought some instruments, some tools that I can use that we can think about. Bird calls. And there's one that's really fun to do. And it's a little black and white and gray bird that we have. It's called a chickadee. And the chickadee makes different kinds of calls and sounds. But one that the chickadee makes is chickadee dee 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 dee. And that's kind of tricky. But we could play it on my rhythm sticks. These are called claves. Chickadee dee 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 dee. Chickadee dee 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 dee. You could find 2 sticks at home and try to do that. Even if we did the owl call, the hoo 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 hoo. And some of you might even have one of these at home. Remember we had it at school? It's called the glockenspiel, but it also has another name. People call it a xylophone. And the xylophone, remember, has big bars, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller until there's a smaller bar of metal. And when you tap it, do you remember? The pitch changes from low to high, because remember, big is low and small is higher. Let's listen. That's really cool. Now let's go backwards. Did you know that you could make patterns on this too? I made a pattern. Let me show you. Blue, red, red, green. Blue, red, red, green. Now, if I kept on going, what would be next? If you guessed blue, you were right. Let's see if I can play this pattern. Now, it looks like there's two colors of blue. This is the light blue one. So we have blue, red, red, green. Blue, red, red, green. Let's see if I can do it without saying the colors. That's really cool. That's a little more of a difficult pattern. But you could do, if you have a xylophone or a glockenspiel at home, you could make your own pattern. If you don't have one of these instruments, you could ask mom or dad if you can go into the recycle bin and get some different sizes of tin cans and a stick. And you can tap them all and see if you get a different sound from the bigger ones and the little ones. That's fun to do too. But if you have a xylophone, you can even start with an easy pattern like how about if we do blue, purple? That's a music pattern. You can experiment in lots of different ways. That's all for today, boys and girls. I'm going to send you a wonderful game that you can play on the computer with bird song patterns. Oh, I had so much fun when I was playing. It's called Birdsong Hero, I think. It's a challenge game. It'll be fun. So, goodbye for now. Bye.